My story begins with a question from my mother. She'd been watching an infomercial on child sponsorship, and she called me to ask if I thought she should donate. Then she said something that really stuck in my head. She said that those people looked helpless. Now, I've spent my life learning about poverty and injustice and managing international development projects and organizations. I have lived and worked in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, but I haven't seen helplessness in my career. I've seen way too much poverty and injustice, but I also saw potential. I've been awed by local innovation, inspired by local leaders. And I'll tell you something that every honest development worker will tell you. I learned so much more from them than they did from me. I started off studying urban planning with dreams of turning slums into poverty-free neighborhoods. And then I took a year off and seized the opportunity to go and live in Africa. And that's when I began to understand that development is so much more complex than building new neighborhoods. I went on to do my studies in international development and wrote my thesis on a bank that lends to the poor in Bangladesh called the Grameen Bank. The Grameen Bank started in 1976 as a pilot project started by a Bangladeshi professor giving tiny loans to low-income women. And it grew into a bank. 20 years after it began, and that bank inspired a global microfinance movement in developing countries, but also in places like Chicago and Arkansas, 42 years after it began. That bank had nearly 10 million clients, and that global microfinance movement was lending $38 billion in microloans to clients all around the world. As I pursued my career, I saw countless successful local initiatives nearly everywhere I worked. With support, many could scale up and develop innovative solutions. But where was that potential in the ad that my mother saw? In one project I managed in an area where agricultural production was pesticide-free, a Canadian expert came and recommended that farmers switch to hybrid crops. They required chemical fertilizers and pesticides, but that was problematic. In addition to the health, safety, and environmental concerns, that foreign-derived plan underestimated the aggressiveness of local agricultural input vendors. In one village I visited, those input vendors had convinced farmers to overuse chemicals, thereby rendering plots of land toxic and unusable for seasons thereafter. So we worked with local partners to change that plan. Instead, we organized market tours so that cooperative leaders could make their own market assessment and seize opportunities in line with the unique potential of each cooperative. In doing so, they saw potential we could not see. For example, in one village with exceptional quantity and quality of lychee, they ended up exporting to Japan. In other words, all they needed was to learn about the market and build from each community's unique strengths. But where were the stories of local innovation in that ad my mother saw? Because each community's context, perspective, and strengths are different. In fact, if that charity isn't building from and supporting local efforts and successes, they may actually be undermining local initiatives. Foreign organizations attract the best talents with higher salaries. And instead of supporting local initiatives, too many simply subcontract their own projects to local organizations, projects designed to meet donor expectations. So the question I had to my mother was, why were the foreigners the heroes in that ad she saw? Why were the people she's asked to support not the artisans of their own development? And why does she feel pity for the helpless instead of excited and inspired and privileged to be part of something innovative and exciting? But there was one other aspect I tried to explain to my mother, but I couldn't succeed in explaining it in a way that she could relate to her life and her family. It's something intangible we call empowerment. And I couldn't explain it until, at least not until my world turned upside down. Not until I was transformed from the one helping to the one being helped. I was middle-aged and in excellent shape. I exercised and ate well. Then I started tripping and dropping things. I would have severe muscle cramps and twitches. And I felt weakness in my voice and my body. After a series of consultations and tests, I was finally diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS. ALS is a nightmarish diagnosis. It's an incurable terminal disease that gradually paralyzes patients, taking away motor functions and eventually rendering them unable to walk, talk, swallow, or breathe without assistance. Life expectancy after diagnosis is 2 to 5 years. With all that, I could have easily honed in on all that I was losing, all that I could no longer enjoy. Yet, somewhere, just as I saw potential in local innovation and leadership in my career. I also saw the enormous potential of people living with ALS. The year I was diagnosed was marked by the single most successful viral fundraising campaign ever, the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. The Ice Bucket Challenge was a lot of fun. It raised awareness, and also it raised over $120 million in North America alone. But it wasn't created by marketing professionals. Rather, it was created by two guys with ALS, Pete Frates and Pat Quinn, two gentlemen who know what it was like to be diagnosed with this disease. But they weren't the only ones making a difference. All around me, people with ALS are leading and innovating. I have one friend who wrote a book in French about her life with ALS. I have two friends who have raised nearly $100,000 for ALS, and another who arranged her own media interviews on top current affairs programs on TV and on radio, lobbying for access to innovative treatments, because each patient is different. When I first went to an ALS clinic, I saw the other patients there like ghosts from my future in some dark Dickens tale. Some were in wheelchairs, others could walk, but with both arms paralyzed. Some could speak, others had impaired speech, and others had lost their voice. Some could breathe on their own, while others depended on a respirator. But those same patients also had unique strengths like media experience, writing skills, a large network, or experience with policy advocacy. Just like the communities I work to support in my career, each one had different needs and strengths. I also learned about the power of authentic voices, the voices of those who speak from personal struggle. When I was first told that it wouldn't be possible to talk to the chief medical officer at Health Canada, I stubbornly tried anyways. And I got a reply within just a few hours. And we've been in touch ever since. And similar with other issues. If you want to learn about the right to education, you want to hear what Malala has to say, because hers is the authentic voice. She has lived the consequences of being denied her rights and knows the importance of girls' education. Authentic voices have a message to convey. When I participated in meetings with decision makers, I didn't want to evoke pity like that child in the ad my mother had seen. I didn't want to be just a prop, the wheelchair-bound guy who tells his sad story. I know the daily physical and emotional struggle of ALS better than any manager, researcher, or neurologist. And I know the consequences of their policy and their inertia. But the one unexpected lesson learned is that being involved, playing an active role in my own cause can be therapeutic and empowering. As it gives me purpose. As an advocate and a patient in charge of my own health, I'm not a victim, but a determined warrior. Instead of wallowing in all my discomfort and all that I'm losing, I fight, and I am buoyed by our successes. It gives me self-confidence and hope. Because when you're struggling to survive, sometimes that's all you have to keep you going. It empowers me the same way that impoverished communities are empowered when they own their struggle. In my career, I've learned that it's not about listening to beneficiaries and including them in our projects. It's about supporting their initiatives because they are the experts when it comes to their own development. And that has also been my experience with ALS. So if my mother were still here today, I'd ask her if she heard those authentic voices in that infomercial. I'd ask her, where are the ones like me fighting ALS or others fighting poverty and oppression, turning their struggle into a force for good, and in doing so, feeling powerful, not weak. I tell her about my experience with ALS and the tremendous potential of local innovation and local leadership. I tell her that she can see and hear in that charity's ads and reports the indicators of whether that potential is being harnessed or undermined. And then I tell her that in spite of my physical weakness, I feel powerful because, like the local partners of the best charities out there, I own this struggle. Thank you.
Thank you.